Welcome to the Intentional Man Podcast, a podcast that inspires and equips men to lead lives of intentionality and grow to their full potential. I'm your host, Jonathan McGinley, a life coach that helps men just like you create the life that you want and live a story of significance through my coaching and tools on intentionality. Thanks for joining, and welcome to the show. All right, welcome to the Intentional Man Podcast. I'm pumped that you're here, and I'm super excited for this episode. This is actually a pretty special one for me because I got my good friend, really lifelong friend, Seth Silvers, with me today on the show. Seth, how you doing today?
Good, man. Excited to be here. And I think I can't ever remember not knowing you because our parents have known each other for longer than we've been alive. So lifelong friend is about the only description.
Exactly. Yeah, which is super fun. Me and Seth grew up in church together, and then we were in school together, playing sports together, all these things. And now we each have started our own businesses. We even had a stint there where we worked together for a nonprofit, which may come up today. But just our paths have kind of always crossed, and I've always had a lot of respect for you. And it's just cool to watch you pursue your dreams and just go after the things that you feel God's put on your heart. And so that's why you're here. And we're just going to be kind of diving into that story. So I'm super excited about it. So Seth is the founder of a business called Story On, which is an amazing business. So they help business leaders get podcasts off the ground and grow and sustain these podcasts, and kind of been in that space here for a few years and just doing an amazing job. Heard a lot of great reviews from you guys in terms of what you're doing to help people get podcasts off the ground. So we're just going to be kind of diving into your journey into this business, how you started it, the challenges, the highs, the lows, everything. So you ready to go?
Yeah, man, let's dive in.
All right, awesome. So first of all, I was just curious, what really led you to start the business Story On? And I know it's kind of morphed some over the years, but take us back to the very beginning. What was it that led you to start the business?
Yeah, so I had kind of been thinking about the business and thinking about starting it for, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 years. I think I just didn't know what the iteration would look like. And I think even like going to college, I thought I was going to go into ministry. And now I look back at that and I think, I mean, you and I were kind of similar to where with some of the ministry work that we were doing in high school, I feel like it was really natural for the people that were around us to look at you and I, we were figuring out what we're good at and what we like and figuring out kind of some of the passions that we have. And I think a lot of people around us with the best of intentions said cool, you guys should do this in ministry. So I think at 18, I was like, that was the avenue that I just was like, okay, this is I'm going to go towards ministry. And so during college, I knew that I would always have one foot in ministry. And I knew that ministry was super important to me. And that the nonprofit world is really, really a big passion for me. But I began to really see that I felt more called towards the business space and even just skill set and how I thought about things. I was like, man, I feel like I'm actually gonna be able to make more of an impact by building a business. That is super intentional. So I was thinking about that in college, got to know some mentors in college that I was watching them do that. And that was really, really inspirational. And I remember having this moment where I was watching the Super Bowl. I was in college, so I don't know. It's probably 2011. All I remember is Tom Brady was in it. So who knows what you could have been any year for the last 20 years.
Right.
And so I remember watching it with some friends and being super stoked about the ads, getting excited to kind of just sit back and think man, this is the biggest brands in the world. This is, very much their Super Bowl too. They're spending millions of dollars on the spot, but then also hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars on producing the spot. And so I remember sitting back and just being this is awesome. Let's see what can the best of the best do. And almost every year I walked away just being this sucks. What's going on here? And I remember in that moment thinking man, what if they just told stories? And I remember thinking of Coke because they're one of the classic examples, and just thinking what if they, I knew in the moment, this idea is crazy and this doesn't really make sense, but it was instead of buying 10 Super Bowl spots for, I don't know, $50 million, what if they gave away 8 of them or what if with $40 million of that budget, they like poured it into their communities? Like maybe it's through philanthropy, maybe it's back into their employees, maybe it's into like, what their employees care about. Like what if they gave it back in a philanthropic way? And then with their 2 remaining spots, they just told the stories and they just said, thank you for supporting us. Here's what you helped us to do. And I was like, I know I would think that was awesome. And so that kind of just planted this idea in the back of my mind of like, is it possible to help businesses grow through telling stories of impact? And so I kind of just like stewed on that idea for probably like 3 years and was just paying attention to examples that I saw. There's like a lot of little moments throughout the way where I like saw people tell stories for businesses in a way that like really, really worked. And those ideas kind of just like got cemented into my brain to where it started to tell me like, oh, this is possible to like really focus on storytelling and marketing. So that was kind of where it like started. And then, it ended up being 2015. You and I worked together for a nonprofit for a couple years, which was awesome and learned a ton before actually stepping out and starting it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is so cool. And I'm really curious because I think a lot of us have these ideas, like maybe something sparks a business idea, or I could get passionate about this, but the place of actually taking that idea and then actually manifesting it, actually making it real and doing like making that transition to leave what we're doing to start it is the really big one. Which is really hard. And so take me into that process for you. You're sitting on this idea for a few years and then you're in this nonprofit. We got this job going, which was a good job, it was solid at the time. How did you then decide like, okay, this is something I actually need to pursue and I'm gonna, take the necessary risk to do it? What kind of really made you take that jump?
Yeah. And I'm curious what you remember about it too. Cause I can't remember like telling you about it, but I mean, we were driving down, we were like commuting down to Colorado Springs once a week. So, I mean, we were like together for a long time. Actually bringing that idea to life for me started like telling people about it. And that was like the big shift when it went from just being an idea in my head, which it had been for a couple years, to then just telling about it. And I remember meeting one of who is now former business partner, but still a friend, Ryan Tomachek. And I remember talking to him and him and I connected like right away. We met through some mutual friends. We just like aligned on a lot of things. And so we were hanging out and we were just talking about business ideas. And he was just like, man, is there any, you seem to be thinking about business a lot. Is there any ideas that you have, or like, what do you want to start? And so I told him, and right away he was just like, man, that would work. And he was just like, I would like stop what I'm doing right now to like support that. And so that was really interesting. Wow. And so I started talking to him about it with a few other people. And so there was this interesting like pitch competition in Denver. And I like didn't really tell many people about it. We just told like a couple, like Lacey, who I was dating at the time, Ryan, his, I don't know, girlfriend or fiance at the time, but there was like a handful of people and there was this little business competition down in Denver. And it was like what now I know is like a PechaKucha style presentation where you initially have like 20 slides over 5 minutes, and every 20 seconds, the slide automatically advances. And so the whole idea was like this like fast paced presentation, and it was meant to talk about like the dreams that you have. So we put together this presentation. We went down there, and it was very much just to see like, will this work? Like really, like there's going to be a room full of like 40 people. Will people hear this idea and be like, this is stupid? Or will they be like, okay, there's something behind this? And so we give this presentation, and the feedback was like overwhelming. Like everybody in the room was super stoked about it. We also put way more work into our presentation than everybody else there. So it was just like our presentation was really good, which helped. But then like we had a lot of people coming up to us afterwards that were like, hey, we want to stay in touch. We want to stay in touch as you're launching this. And so then I also remember that I was starting to see like, oh, there's probably a market for this. Like there's a lot of questions still. And then I actually remember meeting with one of my business mentors who at the time was on the board of the nonprofit with us. This was with Mike Nowak. And I remember this was like early 2013. So I want to say this was like spring of 2015. It's like 2013. We're still in college. Yeah. 2015. Yeah. And, so I remember sitting down with him and just kind of getting his advice and saying like, hey, I'm starting to think about this idea a lot more. There were some things that were happening at Heartwork that were not bad, but that were just helping me to see like, this is not the place I want to be long-term, like really grateful for my season, but I think this is coming to a close. And I remember talking with him and he was like, if you start that today, I'll be your first client. And he had this big like oil and gas company. And so I was like, wow, this is amazing. So that started the process. Then the oil market crashed and Mike wasn't able to hire us. Oh no, but no hard feelings. It was just timing. But like what I needed was that like support from people. So I started talking to people. I started kind of fishing the idea out there to some people who didn't understand it and to some people that really did understand the industry and was just like, hey, is there space for this? And that really helped it to like materialize from just like an idea in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that's a huge thing is you started actually taking some action steps and you started telling people, even going and pitching that, I think how significant or insignificant it was at the time, just the fact that you actually took the time to prepare, went and pitched it, probably took it from idea to like, okay, this could actually become a reality. So
I remember in that time, like going to Fort Collins Startup Week too. Where like, I think I like talked to Jeremiah and Nikki, who are our bosses, and pretty much like asked for a couple days off. And I just like went and sat through sessions at Fort Collins Startup Week with this idea in the back of my head. And it was just like, man, I just need to like learn. And I remember that week was like super, super important. That was probably 6 months before I actually started the company.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So he's sneaking around to this nonprofit while I'm working away. You're talking to all these other people starting a business. I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously that was the right move for you. But I think what's really cool when you look back on the story is most people get stuck in the idea stage before, because once you start telling people, it starts to become a little bit more of a reality. And once you tell people, it's like there's some sort of accountability to actually doing something about it. And so I think that's honestly a good first step. A lot of times, if you're being really serious about starting your own business, is just start to tell people. And it sounded like you did some market research and just really were kind of learning while you're doing your full-time job. Like, is this a good idea? Is this something I need to pursue? So you're doing all that. Obviously, there's just fears that come with this transition of, you're starting to date a girl. This is the girl you end up marrying. So like there's stability that you want to have going into that, but you're also feeling this call to start this business. What were some of your biggest fears at the time, and how did you overcome them in order to just actually step out and do this?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'm definitely more opportunity driven than fear driven. So I feel like I'm like very aware of like the challenges and the fears, but I've always been way more opportunity driven, which is part of the reason that Lacey and I work well together. So I think there are probably some things I like, and I don't think we should be driven by fear, but I think there were probably some things I was like very naive to. And that I maybe should have been more afraid of. So I remember a conversation with Lacey where, we're now talking about getting married. Her parents like don't really understand my job with a nonprofit at all. Like we tried to explain to them and they were just like, her dad's a doctor, her mom's a nurse. And so just in like very traditional careers. And so I remember it was just like, they like trusted us, but Lacey was always like, my parents don't really understand what you do. So we're about to get married. And I remember Lacey being like, have you like thought about maybe like getting a part-time job while you start this thing? And at first I was like, no, I have this like business plan. Like this business plan shows me that I'll be making, $40,000 a year, which at the time was like crap ton of money. And I was like, we'll be fine. Like I'll be making that much money in like 3 months. And she's like, well, like maybe like just like 8 to 10 hours a week job, like maybe at a restaurant and you'll get like a couple free meals. And at the time I'm like on foods, I'm doing food stamps. and I'm given plasma twice a week. So I'm like, sweet, I get like $200-$300 of groceries a month from food stamps, and I get like $300 from plasma. And at the time I was just like, this is awesome. Like, sweet, I can live off like $1,000 a month or something. So there were definitely some conversations with Lacey where she like helped me to like more accurately see the path forward and realize that it wasn't a bad thing to like, for it not just to be really successful right away. And so I think that was like a big moment of like kind of acknowledging it wasn't necessarily a fear. I honestly like didn't really feel afraid. I probably have more fears now than I did in like that early, like, let's get it started. We're stoked about this. This is going to work. I'm probably more afraid and more aware of things now 8 years in than I was then.
Yeah, that is interesting. Well, it's funny hearing you just talk back to that season, because I think a lot of people think when you start a business, we hear so many success stories of people who like started and instantly it blows up and they're making all this money. And a lot of the messaging we hear is, oh, just start it and just grind, and you just grind and grind and grind. And then if you do that, you're just going to have all this instant success. But for the majority of people, when you start a business, it is a grind like that. You're grinding, but you're grinding, not making a lot of money. And there's a lot of times where it just takes longer than you think. So take me into that season. You launched this business. You think it's going to be, 3 months and you got this money, and it takes a little longer. How did you find the persistence? What did you kind of learn in that season and in order to actually keep this thing going?
Yeah. And I mean, it definitely has looked very different. Like, and I'm sure we'll get into this, but like, there's been different pivots along the way. Like now we're doing exclusively podcasting, and podcasting wasn't even on my mind 8 years ago. Which now looking back is like pretty funny and a pretty big oversight, but it is what it is. And so I think, it's like 8 years in, and really the last like 2 years have been years that I would be like, man, these years have been really successful, and they're still on a lot of people's like metrics charts. If they like look at our revenue, they'd probably still be like, oh, you're not that successful. So it's like, still, it's just been such a journey. I think in the early days, it really was about community. Like I really quickly surrounded myself with other people in the business space. It was very much at the right time. So like right when I started my company that fall, there was a co-working and like incubator downtown called Galvanize that opened up. And it is still like, from now until that day, there has not been a like business space or like a like geographical hub for like startups and business community in Fort Collins since then. And so Galvanize, like I would join as a membership. It was a ton of money at the time. It was like $200-$300. And so I would like go there, and I had like a desk to work at, but like every week they were doing lunch and learns. They were bringing these business experts in, and they were doing these sessions on, product market fit and MVPs and customer acquisition and all of these things. And then there was also like multiple networking events a week at this space. And so for that first year, I was probably going to 4 or 5 different networking meetings a week. I was going to these lunch and learns. I was like working day in and day out with other people that were also in early stage, most of which now are no longer in business, but there's probably like 5 or 6, probably maybe 10 people that I know that are like, they're still running their business, and we all started our business within like a couple months in that incubator. And so I think that's what it looked like for me. But I think in those early days, like having those people around me was super, super important. And in like today's world, where a lot of people are starting their businesses virtually and they're just sitting at home and doing it all online, that sounds so hard. And so I think now I have to be a lot more intentional, because we do have a remote team. I do work from home. So I have to be super intentional about like putting myself in community with other business people. But I honestly don't think that I would have made it that first year without like being around other people that were also at a similar place in the journey and just trying to move forward together. I think I for sure would have like 6 months in been like, all right, I'm just going to go get a job. This is too hard to do on my own.
For sure. I fully agree with that. Launching my own business, I think mostly what you hear, like I said, is, it's all about you. You're going to build this thing, but like in order to be persistent, in order to keep it going, like I personally have needed people around me. I've needed a good community. It sounds like that's what you really relied on. And whether you're starting your own business or not, this is such an important thing for us as men, because there's this like, there's the ego kind of thing, especially when you're starting your own business of, I want to be able to do this on my own. I want to be able to say, I grew this. I want the success. Like, I don't need people. I can do this. I think that's a big temptation, especially us as men, because we want that validation of, this is something I built. Look what I did. But the reality is it's a dangerous place to be when you're trying to do things all on your own, whether it's in business or just in life. And so it's cool to hear your story. I know my story would be the exact same. If I didn't have you, if I didn't have, my business advisory group, if I didn't have other people helping me, probably would have given up a while ago. And so that's just such a good reminder. Take us into, I'm curious, because I think when you jump out as an entrepreneur, you quickly learn that you have to manage yourself. Number one, like all of a sudden there's no set schedule. There's no boss looking over your shoulder. There's no like tasks necessarily being fed to you. You have to manage yourself and come up with those things, stick to the schedule, all that. So take me into that journey in the first couple of years of learning just to manage yourself and your schedule. How did that look for you?
Yeah. Well, first off, when you record the episode of somebody like figuring that out fully, please send it to me, because I want to know the answers.
Yeah. Yeah. We're all still figuring it out.
So that's definitely been that's been one of the hardest parts. Absolutely. I have seen like direct connections to like, if I'm healthy, my business is healthier and it's going up. And if I'm not healthy, then my business is going down.
So true.
So like they are really, really connected, and it took me a while to figure that out. I think there's been seasons, and honestly, it's still very much something I'm figuring out. I think the biggest thing I've learned with it is to like really not like beat myself up or not like do somebody else's rhythm just for the sake of doing the rhythm. I think that it's taken, you mentioned kind of this like hustle and grind, work really hard, like account for every single 15-second period of your day. Like there's so much talk about that. And I think that it's taken me a while to unlearn some of that and to be able to like go through my day a little bit more rhythmically while also still having structure. So I think in those first few years, I was very much just like, man, I just got to run harder. And so then like what that ended up leading to was like, that ended up leading to, I was always overwhelmed. I always felt behind. I never really felt like I could get enough done. And so for me, that ended up turning to like personal struggles of like diving deeper into porn addiction, which then obviously causes marriage problems. And, I remember this moment of sitting down with a therapist as we're trying to like get into all of like the root cause of all of this stuff. And for me, a lot of it, when we were like looking like, this might be weird for the audience, but that's okay. When we're kind of like trying to like think through like, okay, when does this occur? Like, when are you likely to like give into this addiction? And it was usually when I felt like the most overwhelmed with work. It was usually a specific time of day. And it was usually when I had like done a lot of work, but then I was just like, I can't get it all done. And so it was really interesting because I very vividly remember talking with our therapist and him helping me to realize that like, okay, I'm in the storytelling space. So like naturally I'm going to be like, I want to know all the stories. Like I want to know all the stories of all the successful people and all the entrepreneurs that are crushing it. And I want to read all the books and do all this stuff. Like I got to know the stories. I was surrounding myself constantly, like every hour of every day, with stories of people that were doing more than me, at least on the outside, that were more successful, made more money, that probably looked better than me, all of these things. And so I was constantly surrounding myself with these stories that the way I was interpreting them was like, I'll be there one day, but I'm not there yet. And it's weird because there's a piece of that is healthy. Like aspiration is absolutely important. But for me, that was like crushing me on a daily basis because it just created this comparison syndrome. I felt like I wasn't enough. I felt like I was never doing enough. Wasn't really talking to people about it, even though I was around people. And so then it led to like just all of this personal struggle. So I think for a few years, I really was trying to do like, just work as much as you can. And, trying to kind of like read all the books, listen to all the podcasts on like kind of trying to hack my day. I remember kind of the epitome of that was probably like 3.5 years ago when I had this one like really big client, and they were 3 hours ahead of me time wise, and they started work at like 5 or 6 a.m. And so I really wanted them to know that I was working early. So I was working, I would like wake up at like some mornings I started work at 3 a.m. And I'd just like start working, and I'd work like half a day. I'd work till like 11 or 12 for them. And I never should have taken that contract. Like they should have just hired an actual person with a job, not me as a company. And then like the second half of the day, I was like, oh, I'll build my company in the second half of the day. And I just ended up doing both things horribly. Like I wasn't doing any of it well. And that actually led me to the place where it was like, okay, we need to like get rid of all this stuff, focus. And that was when we started focusing on podcasting. But for probably 5 years, it was a lot harder of, I was just trying to like do the grind. Honestly, for the last like 2 to 3 years, I've approached it a lot more with like a lot more graceful and peaceful rhythm. I try to not have like, we're recording this at 8 a.m., but that's because we usually meet every other week at this time. And that's like a really life-giving thing for me. But usually I don't have meetings in the morning. Because I've realized like waking up, like it's best for me to like wake up, get to read, get to enjoy my coffee, get to like get into my day, have a plan for my day, as opposed to like waking up and hitting the ground running. So I don't have a super good answer, but that's been a little bit of the journey. Like right now, I'm probably not as optimized as I like should be in my schedule, but I feel like it's kind of because of like 5, 6, 7 years coming out of like all of the messaging that I've been hearing is like, you got to grind, you got to hustle, you got to do all this stuff, and realizing like, I got to figure out the rhythm that's healthy for me and healthy for my family. And that probably means that my business will grow slower, but I believe that it means my business will last longer, which is more important to me.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks for your honesty and vulnerability, but also I'm really glad that you brought that up, because I think that's such a good message. Because and a lot of times on these kind of podcasts, we hear that message over and over. You have to, account for every minute, and you have to grind, and you have to do this. And it's like, I love, planning and scheduling. And I think that's really important. But ultimately, if it causes you to go to a place where you're not healthy as an individual, then it's not serving you. And it's interesting to hear you say that like your business has been more successful the times that where you're healthy, and the times where you're not healthy. Maybe you could be working, double the hours, but if you're miserable and stressed and comparing yourself and, stuck in all these other things, then your business usually isn't doing as well either. So I think it's such a good thing to dwell on, because I think we hear grind. But if you're doing that at the sake of your mental health, at the sake of like just your joy and, enjoying life, that honestly doesn't really lead you to much good. Whether you're starting a business, whether you're just working in a 9-to-5 job, whether you're stay at home, whatever it is, if you put just the hours before your actual like mental health and joy and happiness, like it honestly usually doesn't lead to a good place.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm
it's
really
just
glad
not
you
worth
brought
it.
that up.
And it's like, it's just not worth it. And I think I don't know, even like there's this arbitrary, like, oh, do you do $1 million in revenue a year? Like having $1 million business, which is just like some number that we pick because it's a big round number. But I think like realizing for ourselves, like, you could like, if we're doing like a few 100,000 in revenue, like if you have a smaller business, but you have margin and it's taking care of you and you're healthier, like realizing that is better than you having like a $5 million business and it looking awesome to other people. And I'll admit like that's still hard for me to like, wrestle with. But like the last couple of years, my business is like, it's taken care of our family. Our contractors like love their jobs. They love what they're doing. And we're growing. And it's, 8 years ago, I would have probably been pretty disappointed if I would have like looked at my bottom line 8 years, like now, and been like, well, that's where you'll be in 8 years. And so there's just been a lot of like reframing how I think about the journey. And just being like, trying to be okay with where it's at and trying to do what feels best for right now.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that. And I think, I mean, comparison is just such a thief of joy. And it's so easy to do. So easy to do, especially when you start your own business and you're reading these books and you're looking at other people who are so successful or they did it faster than you. And it's so easy to look at that and never be satisfied with where you're at, even though like you are doing well and you are growing and you're running a business, which most people can't do or won't even have the courage to step up and do it. I always love to say, like, compare yourself to your former self. You know, if you're going to do any kind of comparing, compare yourself to your former self. If I know, like, last year my business was in this place and then now it's like it's grown even from there, it's like, okay, cool, I'm on the right track. I'm growing. And I can be stoked on that, of like, I'm seeing growth in myself and my business. But if there's always going to be somebody that's a little bit ahead of you, and so if you're always just looking at that, you're going to feel inadequate, and that's a bad place to be when you get stuck in that feelings of inadequacy. So anyway, I appreciate you really being honest and just sharing that, because I think that's so important. I think it's so easy to do, to get caught up in that comparison game. And if you're not healthy, then the business isn't usually going to be healthy as well. So appreciate that. So take us from kind of that season. You're in the middle of it. I know you guys kind of shifted gears in your in what your company's focused on. So take us into that season. How did you end up landing on podcasts specifically?
Yeah. So I had started a podcast called Small Business Storytellers. Wasn't really thinking there would be much of like a business piece to it. Like I wasn't thinking like, oh, I'm going to start this to get clients. It was literally just like something that I just wanted to tell the stories. And it was just like a passion project. And I saw it start to have like good impacts on my business. You know, we got some client, like some of the guests ended up hiring us. Some other people that ended up hiring us were like listeners, and they were just like, man, if you're doing that well, you're probably gonna do this well. And so really loved the space. I realized that for me, like it was really energizing. And I tried like multiple times to like do the whole YouTube thing, and it was just like overwhelming and draining. And so podcasting, like I just really, really enjoyed it. And so we got a couple other like small clients where, you know, I think like the first time somebody hired me to help with their podcasts, they were paying me like $25 an episode or something. And I was like, well, like I can, you know, I'll only spend 2 hours on that, and like, I don't know, making $13.50 an hour or whatever it is, $12.50 an hour. Like that's not too bad. And now I mean, it was what it was. Like at the time that felt like the best decision. So we had like a couple small clients that had grown, and this big client that I had that I was like waking up at 3 a.m. for, that like came to a head. So like I was like finally making like pretty decent money. And so we signed a contract to build a house. And then like the week that we signed that contract, that client fired me. I definitely did not have enough revenue without that client to like make everything work. And so Lacey and I kind of looked at it, and I told her, I was like, okay, we could still get out of this contract, and like get our money back, or we could move forward for the next 6 months until the house is built. And we could initially like, and I kind of said, I was like, give me 4 months to like truly just focus. Like I'll shut down everything else other than podcasting. Like those clients are the happiest. They've been paying us the longest, and give me 4 months to just like try like actually focusing and just building podcasting, and let's see how it goes. And if in 4 months it's not in the place that it needs to be, then like I'll go get a job, and we will then decide, okay, let's either not move forward with the house or move forward with the house. What was at risk was like 1% of the house value, which wasn't insignificant, but also like that was like our earnest money, where we're like, if we move forward on this plan, like we either get the house or we lose 1%. And so it was a little bit of a gamble, and we're like, okay, well, we feel like it's better to try. And it was really interesting because as soon as I said, and at the time it was coaches and entrepreneurs. At the time it was coaches and consultants. And as soon as I went out there and said, hey, we help coaches and consultants launch and grow podcasts, I started getting tons of referrals because people finally knew how to refer me. I wasn't just like a marketing company. I wasn't just somebody who helped with storytelling, which is all super vague. And so I had like, I think I did about 60 interviews with coaches and consultants. I did 30-minute interviews over like a month. The first month I just did research and I just talked with as many coaches and consultants as I could. And I just asked them like, have you wanted to start a podcast? What's held you back from it? What would be the obstacles? I could just really interview them and gather data that helped to inform me. And so, yeah, we were able to get to the place where we had enough clients to like make the business work. I hired a virtual assistant. I started like bringing some people in because at the time it was just me. And hired, somebody to come in and help with like content and operations. And so that really was like where the shift happened. It was very much like it needed to happen. And it was kind of this moment where it was like, I've heard all the people on all the podcasts say like the riches are in the niches and niche down to blow up. And for, 5 years, just thought that's great for them. Like I'm going to serve everybody and be successful. And so it really was, it sounds like cliche, but it really was when I like sat down and was like, okay, I'm just going to focus on this market. And over the last 3 years, we've actually gotten even more narrow, like realized within that, like we really can't help everybody. And so we've gotten more and more narrow with who we're serving. So that was kind of the journey into it. And then the last like 2.5 years have been really good getting into podcasting. I love the industry. People seem to like our takes and our ideas and our perspective and approach in the industry, which I'm grateful for. And yeah, it's just, it's been great. There's still a lot we want to do, but I don't see myself doing really anything else other than podcasting for the next like 4 or 5 years, just trying to build as trusted as an agency as we can.
That's awesome, man. Well, and what's so cool is like the thing that I really love about your story is most people wait to take action until they feel like they have it totally figured out. And whether this is in business or this is in life, I know this has paralyzed me before, especially when you're coming out of college or you're early on or later on, you honestly don't know what you want to do. And the fear or the unknown of not knowing exactly what you're going to do keeps you from actually taking action. And obviously you had a business plan, but like, and you dove into it. And then as you went, you learned and you figured out and you grew and you redirected when you needed to, and you made the changes. And then now you found the thing that you're passionate about, the thing that you're good about, your niche. And so I think there's a lot to glean from that story of persistence and just consistent action in a certain direction. And then you're going to find your path. And I feel like that for me too, is like, I was paralyzed for a long time after college, not knowing what I wanted to do. But once you actually start to take the steps and start to pursue your passions and start to just get into it, usually you kind of end up figuring it out as you go. And so I love that. You can just see that all over your story of like, you followed your passion and you took the action. And then now you like landed in such a good space that you really love to do. So,
yeah. And I remember like in the early days when we were still working for Heartwork, I actually remember, I very vividly remember feeling like I am not totally ready for this and I don't have the answers, but also feeling like I'm going to end up doing this. And there was even a point where like we were working with another agency, it was like a partner agency, and we're going to do some work with like really big brand. And there was the opportunity for me to go work in-house for this agency. This was probably in like 2018. And so I actually like almost took this job. And then when Lacey and I were talking about it, it was like, I'm going to come back to Story On. Like I'm going to start this again. Like I know that this job might be 2 or 3 years. And then we'd come back. And so then it was very much like, well, if I know I'm going to be doing some iteration of this for the long term, like why not start now? Like why not keep doing it now and keep figuring it out? And that was how it was when it started too, is it was kind of this feeling of like, I need to start failing and figuring out what I don't know sooner rather than later. Like I didn't feel at the time like there was going to be any benefit to me waiting. I'm sure there could have been a million things I could have done that would have been beneficial. But at the time it was just like, it was like, might as well start now. Like I know I'm going to do this. And as soon as it was like, I know this is going to happen, it's like, well, I might as well start now and try to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you wait till you're ready, you're just going to keep waiting. And I think you just have to go at some point. And like you said, learn, fail, be okay with that along the way. And just, see failure as opportunities to learn and to grow, and then just keep pushing. What's really cool too about your story is it's not the instant success that we hear a lot about. And a lot of people, when they take the jump, it's either instant success that keeps them going, or you don't get it, you compare yourself to others and you quit. But you've been doing this for a long time now, through a lot of ups and downs. What has truly kept you going the whole time? Like, what's your big why? What's been the thing that's just really kept you going, whether it's been going well or going poorly?
It's a good question. I probably should have more of a clear answer behind it. I think that like I've always wanted to see business like used as a force for good. And now that like language is kind of used more commonly, and some might be like, well, that's kind of cheesy. But I think that like for me, I do like as a Christian, I do feel like our work really matters. And so like I will always be an advocate of people doing like what they want to do as opposed to like just something that's like practical. Practicality matters, but I think like us enjoying what we do really matters. So in that sense, like I'm a builder. Like I feel like from a young age when like you and I were slinging puka shell necklaces to build our treehouse, like we literally were like building. So like we've always liked building something. And so I think that for that, like I feel like I very much come alive in like business settings and with the idea of building things for impact. So I mentioned in college, like I saw a couple mentors that they built huge businesses, and I literally like I watched them give away one family millions of dollars, another family hundreds of millions of dollars. And seeing them work really, really hard in business, build a business that serves people extremely well. It's not some like cheesy business that has like Jesus plastered all over. Like it's just a really, really stinking good business that solves people's problems really well. And they're doing that so that they can see the gospel advance, so that they can like bring an end to poverty, so that they can pour into their communities. That's always been really motivating for me, is like building a vehicle. And that's always like kind of been a calling for me, is to like build a vehicle that we feel like probably not on that level, like what level we give back on, like that's not my decision, but that we have opportunity to use this vehicle to like give back to our employees and give back to our community. So that's always been a really big motivator. And for me, like this is where I do get practical. From a practical standpoint, building a business is probably the best way for me to like be able to do that. So that's always been a really big drive. Beyond that, and kind of like more connected to our work, I really, really love the position of an agency where I get to kind of live vicariously through my clients, and our focus is more on telling their stories than telling our story. And so, I mean, some of the clients that we have worked with, like, I mean, Ryan James Miller, like he has some amazing stories and amazing things that he's like worked through. And like, he has very transformative story. Working with like the president of Kajabi, who has built this massive, massive company and now has like so much practical advice and a platform that could literally change like hundreds of thousands of people's lives. Like it's amazing to get to accelerate those stories and to be able to help people that have all of this stuff inside of them, but they don't necessarily know what to do with it. That's what really excites me, is being able to use our skill set to then further those stories through podcasting. And that gets us like probably every couple of weeks, I remind our team like, hey, like actually, like, don't just go through the work you're doing, like actually like listen to it. Like just take time today to like pay attention to the story that you are working on and recognize that like your work is helping maybe tens, maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of people to hear that story that matters. And that's really exciting for me.
Yeah, really exciting, which is so cool. I'm just proud of you, man. And I really like when you say that, I just know that that's truly your heart. And, if you're starting a podcast, go to Story On, because Seth truly does care about the people that he works with and the stories that are being shared. What's really cool about that, and we've talked about this in the show before, but like pursuing significance over success. And success is just about you. It's about an individual. Significance is about others. And I think significance in pursuing that and having that why is so much deeper than just like, I'm doing this for my own personal success. And I think if you would have had that as your only thing to fall back on, I don't know if we'd be sitting here having this conversation right now of 8 years, of a lot of ups and downs, if it was only like attached to you personally, and just hoping to gain for yourself. But the fact that you came into it saying, I want to impact people, I want to share great stories, I want people to hear about awesome things that people are doing, and I want to take time to really care for my clients. Like, I think the fact that you had that mindset at the beginning really has helped sustain you the whole time, because you're like, this is bigger than me. This is about significance. This is about other people. This isn't just about my personal success. So I really commend you for that.
Yeah, there's a lot of easier ways to like make money than like, I feel like I'm just like trying to figure out how to like grow a money tree in my backyard out of thin air some days. And so there's easier ways to make money. So I think like you hit the nail on the head. Like we have to have deeper drivers behind building a business, because it is way harder than just getting a job and getting paid well by somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it is. Yeah. I feel like we learn that pretty quickly once you start a business. It doesn't always go as planned. So you have to have a deep why driving it. So kind of to wrap this thing up, for somebody just thinking about starting their own business, maybe they're in the transition or they just have the idea stage like you had early on, what would just be some of your biggest advice for somebody who's taking that jump and starting their own business now after all these lessons that you've learned? What would you say to them?
Yeah. So like three things kind of come to mind right off the top of my head. One is to like really make sure that you're not trying to do it alone. So, I mean, we talked about this. This has been true of my story. Like surround yourself with other people that are on your journey, but also are like further than you are on your journey. Like you really want to surround yourself with people that can pull you. So maybe that's digitally and virtually, maybe it's in person, but like you just can't do it in a silo. I'd also encourage you like start before you feel fully ready. I remember talking to a mutual friend of ours, Jared Newman, about marriage. And he's like, you're like never going to feel like ready to get, like, you're never going to feel fully ready to get married. Like at some point you have to choose to be ready. You have to choose, like, I'm going to like prepare myself today to be as ready as I can be and to learn as much as I can be. So I think with things that we want to start, like we usually, like if we wait till we're too comfortable, then it's too late. Like I've heard people say this when selling businesses, like you need to sell a business before you're ready to sell the business, because a lot of times people will wait until like after their peak and then it starts going down. They're like, oh crap, now I'm ready to sell the business. And so I think there's something to like taking action before we're ready. And the third thing would be, this is odd and super practical, but I would say read the book Profit First. That book has like changed my business more than any other book. It's a book about finances and numbers, but it helps you to actually have a good understanding of like how you should price your products and services, how you should manage finances in a simple way where like you don't have to be a CPA to understand it. And I think that understanding your numbers in business and what your numbers need to be and how you need to price things and how you need to like how money needs to flow through your business. That's another thing where like the more educated I've gotten on finances, the more money we've made. And so I think that book was really, really helpful for me. And I think that for any like small business owner or somebody getting into business, that's a really, really good resource that kind of like just makes things really, really practical. So yeah, those are kind of be my three things.
Really good. Really good. Yeah. Thanks for sharing all that. And that, yeah, sounds like a great book that I need to go check out. I haven't read it before, so I need to go check that out. But I think what you said is obviously super practical for business, but even if you're listening to this and you're not starting a business, I think those things apply too. Surround yourself with good people, take action before you feel fully ready, before you feel fully confident, be okay failing some and learn from it and keep moving. When we talk about living with intentionality, that's taking steps before you're ready. That's being proactive instead of reactive. It's actually pursuing the passions that you have. And that's just all over your story, is that you took the actions necessary to go after what you feel like God put on your heart, what you felt like you were passionate about. And it's cool. It's just cool that we're sitting here now talking about it and that you're still in it 8 years later and you found your niche and you're doing a great job. So thanks for being on here, Seth. How can we as a community support you in Story On?
Yeah, thanks, man. No, I appreciate it a ton. And I would just say, if anybody wants to get in touch, you can go to our website. It's just successwithstories.com. And we always tell people, like, if you're looking to start a podcast, we will help you, whether we're the right ones to help. Like if we are, we'll make that ask. And if we're not, then we'll connect you with somebody that is. We also have like some freebies on the site that kind of if you're thinking about starting a podcast as a business, we have like a business podcast roadmap where it kind of walks you through what questions should you be asking to know if it's the right time. So that's the biggest way you can support us, is by getting in touch with us if you want to work with us. And that gives us the opportunity to take better care of our team, to get more stories out there, and to kind of just keep moving on this journey. And also like twice a year, 2-3 times a year, we put on some big podcasting events in Colorado for Colorado podcasters. So if anybody is wanting to get to know other podcasters or learn more about the space, then we put on some of those events throughout the year, and those have been really fun as well.
For sure. Yeah, they have. You did a great job. Awesome. Well, that's successwithstories.com. Go check that out if you're interested in starting a podcast or just learning more about what that even looks like. Seth, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, and everything you brought today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Thanks. Thank you for tuning in to the Intentional Man podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you would like to support the show, please share it with others, post about it on social media, and leave a rating and review. If you are someone who is looking to take your life to the next level, accelerate your success, and live more intentionally, I would love to help. Shoot me a text at 970-430-6085, and we could schedule a time to meet to discuss your vision and your goals. Again, that is 970-430-6085. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, build a life that matters by living intentionally.